The Itin program is effectively meant for U.S. residents that are undocumented, meaning that they came to this country whether with valid visa and expired or have gotten into the country by some other means. They have been individuals that have decided to apply for an Itin number. Anybody can apply for an Itin number. The Itin number is very commonly used for foreign nationals, borrowers that live abroad, that want to report or need to report any kind of income, or they have tax returns that need to be filed for entities, and so on and so forth. So this program is meant for U.S. residents that are not here with any kind of documentation. So the program is a lot different than the foreign national program, and people end up confusing them. So it's important to understand the difference between them. The foreign national program is for borrowers that do not live in the United States. They don't intend to live here. At best, they have some sort of a visa to visit the country, and they come and go legally, and they have documentation. That's not what this program, the Itin program, is about. It's important to understand the basis for this loan, and it's a traditional full documentation loan. The idea is that undocumented borrowers that live in the United States for a long time have decided to apply for an Itin number, which anyone can do by going into the IRS website and applying for an Itin number and filing tax returns and reporting income. This Itin number is much like a Social Security number, and it's used in filing tax returns. So although the individual might not be here legally, may not have legal documentation to be in the U.S., they are reporting their income, and that's what we're going to use as a basis of qualification. So you have to realize that borrowers that do not, under this program, borrowers that do not have tax returns showing that they are filing their income do not qualify for this program. It does require a 4506, 2 years tax returns, full income documentation, just like you would anticipate on a regular full doc loan. Without those items being in place, borrower would not qualify for this loan. That's the income that's going to be used for calculation. Our minimum loan amount on this program is $150,000. Some highlights to be aware of: we are going up to 75% using non-traditional credit, meaning unreported trade lines and no FICO score. So we're going to run a credit report on the borrower using the Itin number, and if they have a FICO score, we are looking for a minimum 620 FICO score. If they don't, it's fine. They can get non-traditional trade lines and basically use the non-traditional trade lines. One important element to realize is that we allow the use of non-traditional trade lines and no FICO scores up to 75 LTV. So any loan over 75 LTV will require traditional trade lines on credit reporting. So the up to 75%, you don't have to have any credit reporting. You will need some non-traditional trade information. And we don't have anything on the presentation on the screen. However, everyone should have their guidelines, and I'm going to ask you to turn to page 4 of 8, and there's a box there under credit, trade line requirements. So in going above the 75% LTV, the trade line requirements that need to be reporting on the credit report are 2 trade lines reporting for more than 12 months and activity in the last 12 months, or 1 trade line reporting for 24 months with activity in the last 12 months. So going above the 75 LTV would require this kind of trade line activity reporting on the credit report, along with a 620 FICO score. It's important to understand what is required above the 75% and what is required below the 75% LTV. I ask you to then turn to page 6 of 8, which is the non-traditional credit requirements. This is the non-traditional credit lines that are allowed for borrowers looking for 75% or less LTV. On all loans, we're going to ask for rental history. We are going to ask for 12 months canceled checks and a satisfactory verification of rent. I do recognize that in many cases these individuals are not paying via check. It's very possible that they're not necessarily paying with checks. They may be paying cash. They may be paying with money orders. We will consider alternative documentation for that. But in the case of non-traditional credit, where you're actually having to build trade lines that are not on the credit report, you will find that in that section, non-traditional credit, you'll find that there's a Group 1 and Group 2 category. Again, we're looking for non-traditional credit. We're looking for 3 trade lines with minimum 12 months history. So these would be provided in the form of some sort of alternative letter that identifies the details regarding the borrower's trade line history or activity. If you look here, you'll find Group 1 and Group 2. To read this directly, you'll find that Group 1 essentially is really about housing type of trade lines. Rental history, the rental history that I mentioned would be one of those 3 trade lines. So one of 3 can automatically be rental history. I will tell you that rental history is going to be a requirement for a borrower on this program. In other words, a borrower that has never rented or cannot demonstrate any rental history would not qualify for the Itin program. We are not looking for individuals that are looking to buy a home that don't have any kind of housing experience at all. We want that minimum rental housing experience. So you'll find that the Group 1 category essentially is rental history as well as utilities. So water, electric, those kinds of type of trade lines would be counted as the 3 trade lines. You'll find Group 2, you'll find alternative payments that the borrowers may have obtained, and that would basically comprise of the 3 trade lines. So it's important to understand page 6 of 8 as well as page 4 of 8 and understand what would be required on reporting trade lines on the credit report when you're looking for LTVs above 75% and what is required below 75% on the non-traditional credit. Now, a couple of other things, important things I want to point out to you on this program. First and foremost, the borrower must have a valid Itin number. How do we identify a valid Itin number? We look for documentation from the borrower that is some sort of correspondence with IRS when Itin is issued. So when a borrower applies for an Itin number, usually there's correspondence that's sent by the IRS to confirm that this Itin number is registered to XYZ individual. We're looking for that kind of correspondence in our file to confirm. In addition to that, obviously we will be processing the 4506. So we are looking for verification of the tax returns being filed and the income matching what's on the tax returns. A couple of other important elements in this mix to be aware of. We will be looking at the credit report as well as data verify fraud check for alternative Social Security numbers associated with our borrower.